Welcome to the Data Science Hangout. Hope everyone's having a great week. I'm Rachel. I lead our pro community at Posit. And if this is your first time joining us here, special welcome to you. This is our open space to chat about data science leadership, questions you're facing, and getting to hear about what's going on in the world of data across many different industries. And so we're here every single Thursday. There have been some Thursdays where we haven't been here for holidays or something, but same time, same place. So if you're watching this on YouTube into the future, if you want to join us live, you can use the link in the details to add it to your calendar and join the party with us. But together, we're all dedicated to making this a welcoming environment for everyone. And we love hearing from you all, no matter your level of experience or area of work. So it's totally okay to just listen in if you want, but if you want to jump in and ask questions or provide your own perspective on certain topics, there's a few ways that you can do that. So you can raise your hand here on Zoom. And if you're not sure how to do that, it's in the controls down below. But you can also put questions into the Zoom chat, and feel free to put a little star next to it if you wanted me to read it out loud instead, if you're in a coffee shop or something. And then lastly, we have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously too. And our team should share that in the chat here in just a second. If not, let me know and I can share it. But I'm so excited to have Katherine joining me as our co-host today. So Katherine Gerton is Manager of Data Analytics and Reporting at Centene. And Katherine, I'd love to kick things off with having you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your role and also something you like to do outside of work.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Katherine Gerton. As Rachel said, I'm the Manager of Data Analytics and Reporting at Centene. In that role, I actually support our Health Insurance Affordable Care Act marketplace products, supporting the risk adjustment mandate. That's part of that work. I put it in my bio, but when I am not working, I play volleyball and I do a lot of sewing. So I've been working on, that's kind of what I got better at during the pandemic. Was I decided I'm gonna get actually good at sewing more than a rectangle, and have started making my own clothes. So that is what I do. I see we've got somebody else in the chat who's also working in risk adjustment. So that's nice. I didn't want to get too into the weeds on what that actually is, but I'm more than happy to fill that in for anyone who doesn't know.
I also have to ask you, what's one of your favorite things that you've sewed?
I was really proud actually of a pair of jeans that I made that I embroidered with like outlines of different fruit. So
that's amazing.
Really they don't currently fit, so they're not getting a lot of use, but they were really great when I made them. So we'll see if they get a little bit more wear here in the future.
I would not know how to even start with making jeans. That's amazing. Well, Katherine, I know something that we had talked a little bit about and was shared in advance of the Hangout was about the power of embedded teams for kind of bridging the gap between a lot of cool data science the team's doing and then meaningful business insights. And I thought it might be helpful to just understand a little bit about the data analytics team structure at Centene and what that looks like.
Yeah, so it's kind of a hybrid between, your traditional centralized team and your embedded teams within your business areas. So we have a Centene Technologies corporate IT kind of data science, data analytics, where they support a lot of the tech stack, but also facilitate conversations with business teams that may not have their own analysts. They help gather requirements, build some of those models. And then we also have teams like the one that I'm a part of within the actuarial department, where we are a data science team. We are involved in gathering the requirements, building the tools to support that business process, and then interfacing with the centralized teams that do control and maintain the tech stack for us. So that's really what we look like. And I would say, like, I'm super grateful to be a part of that, because not having to know how computers work or how software is built and installed and maintained and all of that is like great for me. I've tried to learn it. It's not something I really like understand easily, and it frees me up to not have to really dig into that. I can spend my mental energy focusing on, okay, these are the data science problems. Also, my cat is here. These are the data science problems that are facing my business unit, and can really dig into those problems.
Okay, we're gonna have to introduce your cat too.
Okay, that's Timber. We got her from the street.
Oh, so
And-
cute.
Yes, and my dog is around here somewhere. Yeah, he's over there snoozing.
He might make an appearance too. Awesome. Well, I know you said you weren't thinking about giving an overview about
Risk adjustment.
risk adjustments, but while we're here and Libby asked it, so why don't we hear
Yeah.
it?
So when the Affordable Care Act was put into place in about 2015, one of the things that was mandated there is insurance companies can no longer deny people coverage for pre-existing conditions. So it doesn't matter what conditions you have to get insurance. You can't discriminate based on rates for those conditions that someone has. So one of the things that is in place in order to ensure that that happens is what's called risk adjustment. And so throughout the year, all health insurance companies submit their claims data and their diagnosis data for their entire populations to these government maintained servers. And then you get credit for the risk. So members have certain conditions that counts them as riskier or not risky. There's a bunch of interaction factors and a whole lot of math involved in calculating how much risk a member has. And so then at the end of the year is when the risk adjustment takes place. So insurers who insure a riskier population actually get transfer dollars from the insurers who insure a less risky population. So it's entirely budget neutral. There's no government money involved in changing hands. They facilitate that transfer between those insurers, but not anything else. So if one insurer insures a bunch of like elderly people with multiple comorbidities, and one insurer insures a bunch of healthy college students, the one who insures a bunch of healthy college students is going to owe money to that other insurer at the end of the year. Just to say, like, we're covering more risk than you are. And then there's the process. So I have a sister team who's involved in the risk adjustment, and I am in charge of the audit of the risk adjustment. So once you've submitted all of this data, the government takes a representative sample of your population and comes back to you and say, prove it. Prove that these members have the conditions that you say that they have. So we have to go and collect medical records, talk to doctors, code all of those records, and then recalculate the risk and prove that the population distribution is as risky as we said it was throughout the year.
Interesting. Yeah, as Libby said in the chat, that sounds like a huge data project. What are some of the like projects that you work on and analytics that come after that?
So there's a huge part of this that's actually competitive intelligence analytics, where, because it is budget neutral and there's transfers between different insurers, how risky your own population is, but you don't really know a lot about the other insurers' population. So there's a lot of data gathering, data aggregation around that relative risk analytics. And then we also have a bunch of analytics involved with predicting which conditions are going to be easy to validate, which ones are going to be more difficult, what pieces of information might we need to gather in the aspect of conducting this audit in order to validate these conditions. So that's all the like post hoc analytics. And then we also have a lot of prospective analytics around identifying members that we think may have conditions that they haven't seen their doctor for yet this year, and closing those care gaps. And
this is reminding me of when Rebecca Hadi joined us as well, and her cat was front and center for the hangout.
Yeah, she, of course, as soon as I joined the call, decided that she needed immediate attention.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, so that's like the overview of risk adjustment. And then some of the high level work. We're also involved, since we are embedded in the actuarial department. There's a lot of financial predictions and analytics involved with forecasting and reserving, and all of that kind of stuff that comes off of the data that you're gathering, but then is involved with licensed actuaries and that kind of business side of the work.
Thank you. I see, Libby, you had a follow-up question on the audits. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a really busy time of year for you. Like, I know I've done audits and I have worked with audit teams in different areas, and there's always like this really busy month or week out of the quarter.
Yeah, so we kicked off the audit last week. That was incredibly busy. There's a lot of vendor data handoffs where we have to gather that information, pass it back to the government, back to other vendors who help us with certain aspects of the audit. And then there's usually a pretty busy season about 2 months before the audit closes, when you're trying to aggregate all of the information that you've gathered so that you can submit it, and then also do some of those financial forecasts.
Nice. So do you have, oh, sorry, I have a follow-up. Do you have like this period where there is a little bit less stuff to do and you're able to start to like work on problems that would make it easier for further audits?
Yeah. So we have, my team's been building a lot of Shiny apps and a lot of dashboards that we've been deploying onto our Posit Connect suite that track kind of like how the audit is going, where there might be points of intervention. If there's something that's like, hey, we're not doing it as well as this as we were last year, flagging that, sending emails, a lot of that. We've also made some data portals where some of our internal partners, where they might need something in a specific format, like an Excel file or a CSV, so that they can do some additional work with it, where they can like upload data or download our results in a way that makes it really accessible for them to continue doing their work, but in more of a self-service way. So it's not like an email to us and then we have to like manually create some sort of, or even just manually run in our script. It's like part of that dashboarding. So we're actually kind of shifting into that for this audit now, of like maintaining what we've done in the past, updating it with some new tools, with some new Shiny development, as well as just, there's always lessons learned from last year. It's like, oh, we weren't tracking that, but we really should have been. And so we're tracking it this year.
I'd love to learn more about that Shiny app too. So you mentioned people can download the data as well. Is that people who typically would want to be working with like Excel data, or what are they downloading?
So that's people who would want to be working with Excel data, or we have, so I sit at Centene corporate, but we also have subsidiary health plans. And so I have access to all of our health plan data, but not everyone who supports the audit execution at the lower levels does. So when they go in, they can just see like the California data, or just see certain like pre-filtered sets of it that's really kind of tied to their login credentials, all of that kind of stuff. So that again, yeah, I don't have to be like, okay, who's asking for this? What health plan do they support? Filtering it on my end. We were able to build those things tied to their internal login credentials, and then they can just do it.
That's great. So a question we used to ask in the beginning of the Hangouts, and I don't know what happened where we stopped asking this, but I'm curious, like, what's something, if you look to the year ahead, what's something that you're really excited about for your team?
We have been working really hard on turning some statistical models into some machine learning models, where we can bring in some different data types and get a little bit more insight out of that. So we have a couple different models that are in the works around estimating our final validation rates for these audits, or estimating some of those like statewide competitive intelligence variables. And where it's something that we've done in the past on like an ad hoc basis with different, hand grabbing different Excel files and things like that. So we've been working really hard to kind of bake that into our data science ecosystem, where it runs on our database queries and it gathers things like that. And we're currently in the stage of like figuring out how to deploy those so that people can access the results. Again, the theme of a lot of the work that we're doing is not like purely self-service, but like mostly self-service, where somebody who wants this can get it and knows how to get it.
How do you like market those applications out across the organization?
So we have, for those applications, we're not really targeting whole organization reach. We have a couple specific partners during audit execution that we really target with those, where they've, they'll ask us for an ad hoc thing and that's fine. But if we, get those same requests more than twice, really, it's okay, let's put it together here. It's going to run every week. It's going to come straight to your inbox. And everyone's like, oh, this is great. We haven't really had a lot of pushback with those internal teams on like, well, no, I really need you to walk me through this Excel file or things like that, and that's definitely something I'm grateful for, because it's not something that happens everywhere, where the partners that I work with are fully on board to receive automatic like HTML markdowns in their inbox.
I see there is some conversation in the chat going on about like Shiny frameworks. And I think, Bill, you maybe had the initial question here. I don't know if you're able to unmute, Bill. But Bill asked, are you using any specific Shiny frameworks like Golem?
No, we've actually had a lot of success with like BS4 Dash, kind of those interactive, like tabular kind of things. So no really in-depth Shiny frameworks, a lot of interactivity and a lot of tabs and click through. But yeah, nothing super high level Shiny, more of just that facilitating that interaction.
Yeah, and I see people are talking about both like Rhino and Golem as well. Alexis, I wasn't sure if you wanted to share any thoughts on this too. I see you commenting in the chat.
Yeah, actually, I've been trying. Rhino has been a little bit more oriented towards software development, and I think a balance between Golem and for people that are just starting. And if you want to go more in depth, I think we'll go with Rhino. However, I think Golem has been pretty good as a starting point for Shiny models.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add that I haven't, because the dashboards that I'm building are really used by like a limited set of internal partners. I haven't really had to worry about things like Shiny load testing or all of those kinds of like broader things that you worry about when you build an app that hundreds, if not your whole company of people is going to use. If I have 3 people in my app at the same time, like that's heavy use on the app on that day. Just because like there's not a lot of need for it. So the most like complicated and business important app that I've built is really, it was a way for me to have to not email 4 people, get 4 different versions of an Excel sheet back and collapse it and then do analytics on it. I made a portal where they can go in, everyone with their login credentials, edit basically the Excel file, but in the Shiny app through like an R hands-on table format and save it in exactly the format that I wanted. And nobody can move anything and nobody can change data types. And it's great. But it's really specifically to people who have those senior coding level credentials. And there's like 4 of them that support this audit. So I think for my team, business value is not measured in number of users or reach of that app. It's really the fact that this saved us so much time and so much money to do it in this way, that like, that's the value of this app for my team.
Okay, a lot of love for our hands-on table already.
Yes.
I was trying to find just like the quick link to it. I'm not sure if that was the right one, but what does that actually do, that package?
So it lets you click into a data frame and make edits and save those edits back out. So those edits can then be re-displayed to the user. It's delightful. It's a little bit hard to learn if you're used to maybe like a GT or a DT data table, but it's basically magical. You can put this table in your Shiny app and people can feel, if you want it to, you can even make it green. If you want people to really feel like it's Excel, you can, but you're basically putting this in your Shiny app and people are editing it, but you can say, this is a data type. This is exactly the date format that it's coming in. This is going to be a number. It's going to have 3 decimal places. And when they hit save, that's exactly what you get back. And I have that linked to our S3 storage solution. So every time somebody hits save, it's a separate record. Like we can go back, we can access historical records. It's made my life so much better. And I think, building tools that make your own life better and then like spreading them to other people is still a really valuable way to do work.
I was just writing that down to save that quote there. I can feel the excitement in the chat right now about people like just discovering this package as well. And I need to look into it too, but it sounds like it would be really helpful for the people who have this use case of they're working with business users who still really want to use Excel and don't want to be interacting with a Shiny application, but maybe need to like download their own Excel data as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's great. And then I'm not as comfortable with, I think it's Tidy Excel, but that's one of the ones that enables you to like, when you write your format back out to an Excel, you can bake in formulas. Like if somebody says like, hey, I really need like this formula to come out of it for some reason, not static data, like let's make it somehow dynamic in the Excel file that you're writing. Like all of those things still work together, even through that Shiny backend.
Awesome. Thank you. Regis, I saw you had a question in the chat. I missed it with all the comments here, but if you want to jump in.
Yeah, let me turn my camera real quick. So I was just wondering, Libby was saying yes, so hopefully that's the case. I've made a couple Shiny apps that require tables that have editing, and the out of the box tables that you make, and maybe Joe Chang is going to change this for future iterations of Shiny. But if you're on page 10 of a table that has 1,000 rows, and then you need to change what's in the table, by default, Shiny will reset that table back to the first page of the table. But Yihui has some extensions for the DT package where if you need to change something in page 10, you can, I think there's a replace data function in the DT package. And I'm just wondering if our hands-on data has something like that, so that if you're on page 10 and you're doing something super fancy in our hands-on table, that it won't send you back to page 1, which will drive everyone using it crazy.
Yeah, so there's, it's like part of the our hands-on table offering, but when you click into a cell, you can store that row and cell value. So that's one of the things that I do with like the reactives and the callbacks is I store this, and then you can index anything that you're doing based on that, or like send it back to pull up this page, pull up this row, or any changes that you're making can be tagged with that cell that you've clicked in.
But I mean, when you change it on the back end, the Shiny side, the R side, and then you push it back to the interface, does it make sure that it doesn't set the table that it's displaying back to the first page if you edit something on the 10th page?
I think there's probably a way that you can do that between your observers versus event reactives, because observers, I think, execute all the time. So if you put your table render in an observe, it's going to automatically go. But if you wait, you can save it and have it wait to re-render until after you click some other button. So you can store all of that data and then not render your table until you're ready. And I think you can also set it to render. If you save that page, you can have it re-render on page 10.
Oh, okay. So you can say this is the page to stay at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not something that I've built directly, but I've seen some like pieces around doing something like that.
Yeah, and I think Jeff is saying use input DT row last clicked and rows selected. But that's for the D. I mean, does DT and our hands-on table work together? Do they work together then? Is that how? Because those are DT. Anyway, maybe we're getting into I don't know. It's a hangout. I don't know where the line is. So
I'm seeing in the comments, somebody had recommended doing like a deep dive on this topic, and I will definitely take that on as an action item and ask who from our team
I
might
think
be
it's just
interested.
something that so many people on data teams have to deal with, is like, it doesn't matter how powerful your backend is if ultimately like the business user who maybe has an analyst on their team who's maybe comfortable in Excel and can write some SQL, like it doesn't matter if they can't interact with it as your deliverable. And not everything that you deliver is suitable for an HTML markdown. Like sometimes clickable graphs are what you need, but sometimes like people really like tables and people really need tables. And so there's certain things there where you have to like meet people where they are on data science. It doesn't do you any good to be like, well, have you tried doing it in R? If the person doesn't like even know what that is. So
yep.
I think that's really, really where I'm at on some of these things, where I'm like, I have no hate for Excel. Don't love it, but I have no hate for it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I know, Travis, you had a question I think was maybe touched upon, but I want to make sure we answer it fully if you want to jump in here.
Sure. I know persistent data storage, in particular, writing to data stores is not always easy in Shiny. Sounds like you're using S3. Good experience, I suppose. Like, I'm curious, if you're using our hands-on table, I'm actually really curious about the way that someone would enter data into it and then send it to the database, I suppose, right?
Yeah,
Because
so
it's generally easy to like report out from it and pull things in and summarize them, but like sending stuff is harder, at least to me. Maybe you've solved it.
So we've solved it in kind of like two ways that we then work together. My team built a package that helps us like handle our internal S3 credentials, so that the app has the service account credentials, the app has access to S3 as part of like setting up our environment variables. So that was the first thing that we did. That didn't make it so that the individual user needed to have the right S3 access to the bucket. And then I also, I'll say invented, nobody invented this, but invented it for this app. We've got the submit button, and we also have a save for later button, where in terms of just like naming these files, it's like, okay, is this done? Save it for later. Every time you want to save something, you can send it to S3 and it saves that portion of data that I would expect, regardless of what's in it. And it's tagged with that like intermediate tag. And then when they hit submit, then it's tagged with that done. And what I actually have as part of that interaction is in that display, when you're going to say, okay, what rows do I need to edit? It brings that tag back in. So the user knows what's already been changed. What are they like maybe still working on versus what are they comfortable with that done? But really just like we've got it as a save RDS really from that S3 call. Just save the RDS, because I'm the only one and my team who's going to have access to like, oh, hey, I need to know what I did last month. I can go back and I can read RDS and write it to that file for that person.
That's super cool. But for the S3 needs, is that just on your Shiny team, people that are maintaining that backend infrastructure, or do you have cloud support as well? Like,
so we have, that's part of that corporate IT kind of centralized. They maintain our S3 storage. So actuarial has our own storage. We also have like a broader Centene storage and things like that. And the IT team is in charge of maintaining that. And as I said at the beginning, that's one of the things that I'm grateful that I don't have to know how to do it. But I'm also very grateful that the technology solution exists and that I have access to it.
Loving all of this table discussion here too. I did just want to share in the chat, I just learned that Rich, who maintains the GT package, started a GT Discord server, which has been really helpful for people to ask questions there too. Alan, I see you had asked a question in the chat. Do you want to jump in here next?
Yeah, This is super fun. I love when the chat is just like excited and everybody is like enthusiastic and learning stuff. It's really, really fun. At the risk of like pivoting away from that, Katherine, I'm super curious what your kind of day-to-day is like. We're obviously like in the technical weeds here, and it's really great. What's the balance of that for you with leading or managing or doing strategic stuff, you know, that kind of thing? Like what's the, how much of that do you do, and what's your experience doing that as a leader of the, you know, working with the team that you're working with?
Yeah. So I would say I'm pretty, maybe like 60-40 leadership to in the data. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that I've been at Centene. I started there as like a data scientist one, and am now a manager of a data analytics team. So a lot of the things that I learned as a data science, databases that I, as a data scientist, databases that I got access to, things like that, where I'm like really comfortable with certain pieces of the job, is still really helpful for me to be doing, because I can still do it reasonably quickly, and all of that. And my team is also pretty small. I have 2 direct reports and my sister team has 3. And so together we're like a data science org of about 8. And so we're a pretty small team. And so there's still a lot of need for like, hey, can you do this for me really quick? But in terms of like strategic leadership, and direct management of my team, there's a lot involved in terms of making sure that us as an embedded team stay up to date on what the tech stack development looks like and where those tools are going to live, and how can we make sure that we maintain access to the new tools and potentially transition processes, but also keep support for these processes that aren't ready to be transitioned yet. So there is a lot of that strategic leadership in terms of project maintenance, because when you're the actuarial department of an insurance company, you can't just like not file a rate or not turn something into the government. All of this work still needs to go on while you're doing all of the like forward initiatives with your data science. So there's a lot of that. And then I've personally been a lot more involved. I'm on the leadership council for our Women in STEM initiative. So there's a lot of that sort of, and our user group, but I kind of, that's a given here on the R Hangout. But there's a lot of that community building and reaching out to people that I've kind of incorporated into some of my leadership work. Of a lot of things is like making sure you know that other teams exist, which in an organization at the size of Centene can be really difficult. Just like, oh, I didn't know that this team was doing this kind of thing with membership. I have a need to do something with membership. Let me make sure that I know who to reach out to. And that's something that we've been really working hard on in our next internal, our user group meeting. And we're trying to do it a little bit in everyone moving forward, is someone just highlighting their team. And this is what we're doing. This is how we're using the Centene tools. Maybe it's not always R, but it's just, this is how we're using our data. This is the data science that we're kind of doing to keep those relationships built. Again, I think going back to something I said earlier, like I did it for me, and then I'm more than happy that it's helping other people also in Centene.
It's great. Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. I also, I was curious also about your sort of journey to the role that you're in. So knowing that you started as data scientist, have moved into and through the organization is also, it's also really interesting to know. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't think my journey into data science is particularly different from anyone else's on this call. I have an applied science background. I have biomedical engineering and applied math, and I didn't want a PhD, so I got a data science job. And I think that's a story that will resonate with many people on this call.
I want to make sure I get to some of the anonymous questions too. I see somebody had asked on Slido, and I think it was when you were describing the Shiny app you created perhaps,
Okay.
but it was, is this aggregated information across all suppliers provided on some de-identified way to the public, or all the suppliers? And I can
So
copy
it is
the
not
question.
provided to the public. It is anonymized, but it is not de-identified to the point of meeting like HIPAA compliance. So this is individual data that we get back. Summary results by state and potentially by health plan are available at the end of the audit on the government HHS websites, but you would not have access to this member level ACA marketplace information anywhere.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, I see you had just asked a question here in the Zoom chat. You want to jump in?
Sure. I had to move down to my first floor because our second floor is like a sauna here. And, you know, I'm in Minnesota. We've gone from winter to summer very quickly. Yeah, I was just sort of curious how your team's work divides up maybe between like machine learning type tasks and then other, you know, reporting, summarizing, presenting, essentially every other kind of data science work. And then like if that, you know, do you feel like the organization or business sort of appreciates both pieces of that work, and does sort of like how much it's getting noticed and used kind of match with how much time you're spending in each of those?
I would definitely say yes to the second part of that. My organization and my reporting pipeline, very interested in those kinds of like machine learning improvements, not just for the sake of saying that we're doing machine learning, but for the sake of this is improving this forecast that we have or this thing like that. We're thrilled that there are tools available to help us improve that. So that's great. And then in terms of balancing the work, because we do have busy seasons with audit conduction and then a little bit of downtime before we're back up on audit, we tend to do a lot of the data science work during our downtime of audit, because those are the things that make when we do kick off the audit easier. But also during that time, we have a lot more less technical business partners who need summarizations of that data. They need weekly reporting in a downloadable format or a graph or things like that. So for us, we're lucky that a lot of those things have been able to be automated based on the way that we're storing and accessing and running these reports. But there's still plenty of need for, like, I think, like I said, like, oh, we weren't tracking that last year. Now we have nothing in place to track that because it's a problem. And doing some of that scramble. There's always some of that data wrangling, data display scramble when you run into a new issue. And then during our downtime, we bake that in to models, to reporting, things like that, so that we don't run into it next year.
Thanks.
Thank you. For Riza, I see you had asked a question in the chat. Do you want to jump in here next?
Sure. I was just asking actually kind of what your tech stack is. So are you running POSIT sort of in the cloud? Are you running it locally? The reason I'm asking the question is I'm from Canada, also in insurance, but we have very strict rules around our data. So we've only been able to stay locally for right now. So I'm just kind of curious how you ended up building out that stack a bit.
Yeah, so we have some of the POSIT professional tools. We have the package manager and RS Connect. I think we're currently running R in Jupyter Hub through that, but all of our data is on-prem right now. And so our corporate centralized IT has built a lot of protections around different environments where you can publish things and it needs to be approved through the certain pipeline for PHI and all of that kind of stuff. So there's some heavy considerations with publishing any information, even internally for internal use. Going back to, like, not everyone has access to the same level of PHI within this organization. So being really careful about where that's displayed. Like I said, all of our databases are on-prem, and then those different environments that they've set up have access to different levels of that information.
Thank you.
And maybe if there is anybody else who's based in Canada and wants to comment in the chat to help Fariza as well, feel free. Another anonymous question was, how has the push for value-based care impacted how your risk adjustment is done?
So value-based care, for those who are not aware, is a method of paying providers based on like some metric of care value that they're providing, whether it is risk adjustment capture, whether it is medication management or whatever. It's usually a contractual arrangement with your provider. So it's something not all providers are in value-based care arrangements. And that's not actually from, the grand scheme of government mandated risk adjustment. They don't care what your provider arrangement looks like. So for us on the back end, that's part of plan design. So if we're going to say like these members can sign up for this kind of network within this value-based care arrangement, there might be different premiums associated with that, different aspects of the plan design that feed the risk adjustment transfers. So what that comes down to in terms of risk adjustment is understanding the population that is participating in that plan. So different people may choose to select different plans based on their own personal needs on the marketplace. And so understanding what is driving whatever subset of members to enroll in these plans is really where some of the analytics that our risk adjustment actuarial team is doing, because of how you price it, how you design that, then you come back and say, okay, well, what is the risk of these members?
Thank you. I think that we are not doing the best job of tracking some of the questions in between some of the.
Well, I see there's a lot of chat around Zelda
right
and how hot it is currently.
Yes.
Which, Libby and I are both in San Antonio, and it is hot. We're reaching like don't go outside season. So,
well, I know there are a lot of great questions in there too. So feel free to just raise your hand here on Zoom if there was something you had that we missed. But I see, Libby, you had a question about moving from individual contributor role. Do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, this is always like this is the thing I'm most interested in always. It's like you have moved from an individual contributor role to something that at least involves people management, project management, like bigger stuff that might pull you away from boots on the ground work. How do you feel about that? How did you feel about making that transition? And how has that been? How did that come to be?
I feel great about it. I think it's something that fits within like my personal evaluation of my own skill set. So like I was ready for that transition. But I think one of the things that really helped me with that is like in my individual contributor role, there were certain projects that I was wholly responsible for already. And so I knew a little bit about managing that project, what was involved in terms of talking to the people. So I was already doing that for myself. And then as I got promoted in my pipeline, I actually had a really great leadership mentor talking me through how he was managing his team, setting me up with like, okay, now that you're taking over this responsibility, these are my primary contacts. So somebody really set me up for success in that transition into the people leadership. Something that I've had to balance with myself is part of that of like, there are certain things that I am very good at, and I have a lot of experience within Centene. But now, if I choose to spend my time doing that, that's time that I'm taking away from something else. So balancing that, like I do need to train people to do this task because that's no longer my primary responsibility, is something that I've been navigating and trying to get better at, especially during times when it's not like, hey, we need to turn this around in 3 hours. Because like, if that's the deadline, I'm going to do it. But if we have 24 hours or even 3 weeks, like that's something that I can spend the time teaching someone how to do it right once and then facilitating that in the future.
That's really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was there a specific point where you thought, okay, I'm ready to move from this individual contributor role?
don't think so. I think it was just something that like my reporting chain was generally very supportive of moving any people through the career direction that they want to go. And so as I went from data scientist 1 to data scientist 2 and my responsibilities grew and I was feeling comfortable, it was like, hey, do you think you're ready for this? And I said, sure. And then once you say sure that you're ready for it, you then have to be, because now you're doing it. And there's no room to be like, oh, just kidding. Let me, please unpromote me. So it's,
Yeah.
I felt like I was ready. And then as I made that transition, like my reporting chain was still intact. And so I still had that support from the top down to help me as I learned how to support the people that now report to me.
Something that's been hard for me is like when that career track doesn't already exist for your role, like figuring out how to then go from individual contributor to a manager. And if it's like creating your own role or finding a different part within the organization where that would fit in as well.
Yeah, so I think that's something we've kind of worked with our HR partners, being embedded in the actuarial department. I think before I was hired in as a data scientist, everyone in that org had to have actuarial titles, even though these were people not pursuing actuarial credentials or anything like that. So there was a big push to say like, okay, we're actually allowed to hire people with data titles into this role. So it can feel like there's a lot of like swimming upstream there, because there is corporate inertia there's a reason that these orgs were built this way when it started, but having someone who understands that like the corporate needs are changing and there's a need to hire people with these different skills can be really valuable in designing that. And then like if you're moving into a management position, but there hasn't historically been one, it's working with them to say, okay, well, what do these job posts look like in other orgs? Going through the whole process of, okay, let's just copy and paste that, but put it in this org. Or maybe we need to change, what tools does this person have to know? But that's part of that conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Zachary, I see you had asked a question in the chat. There's stars next to it, so I'll read it. But it was, how do you and your team generally keep track of all the R packages? For example, we discussed so many even in this Hangout, and also new packages that come out. There's just so much.
So we have in our bi-weekly team meeting, after we go around and we say what everyone's been working on, what do they need any help with, we actually have a little slide that's called R Spotlight. And there's a web scraper that just runs and it lists all like, oh, here's, what's from the new in this packages from the blanking on the name of that, like our weekly, I think it might be our weekly update. It kind of like scrapes that and just plops it into our team slides for us. And so when me or the other manager have a little time before the meeting, we'll go through that and kind of pick out the ones that we think we should individually highlight. But even that, we've got some like keyword searches, but it brings it in. So it always stays on our radar, even if you're not paying super close attention. And then we also have within our data science community, a couple R devoted channels. So if somebody's asking a question about a package or about something that they heard, we can keep an eye on that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, there's now been 4 questions about this package. Let's learn a little bit more about it. So all of that to say, I think I kind of outsourced knowing everything that's going on in R to the point that where it does filter to the top of my consciousness, that's something that I actually, should learn about.
That's great. Thank you. I was just copying over the chat or into the chat our weekly as well for people to check out. Greg, I see you have a question in the chat here too. Do you want to jump in?
Yes. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Take me a minute to get off mute.
No worries.
Yeah. So I heard at the beginning you mentioned that if you get multiple requests for the same thing, that you'll then talk about building something that's self-service or an app or whatever it might be. To keep track of all those, do you maintain any kind of like data and analytics roadmap, or do you do anything to like assess the value of multiple requests?
Yeah, so our primary method for tracking that is actually we use GitLab, and we have issues and epics and milestones related to a lot of that, and then can use the comments of like, got asked for this again, something like that to prioritize. We have been having to do a lot more with value analytics in terms of saying like to prioritize our work, because we've started getting more and more as we've integrated with more teams, taken on more responsibilities, to say like, okay, well, what's the priority for us, and what's divorcing this is valuable to me and my team and would save us time versus this is what's valuable to the organization, and this is the amount of money that we will save or not spend or whatever if we implement this, is something that does require a little bit of tracking and a little bit of, we work with our corporate IT partners to say like, okay, if we put this much data on this storage solution, how much is that going to cost to maintain it in this way? And all of those kinds of discussions, that goes back to what are my responsibilities now as a manager versus an individual contributor, is having to think about stuff like that. But a lot of it is in terms of like the multiple requests, it would be like, we ran a report once and it was ad hoc, and now we've gotten asked for it a couple of times. So the code still exists, and it's not a lot of ground up development. It's just a matter of like putting it in the right spot. So like on RS Connect and just scheduling it or something like that, where it's not a huge lift there, but it is then gets us more cred as like we've got another thing published. And then you have some of those other considerations about like login and PHI and stuff like that once you get it to that point. So it's not no development, but it's not ground up. The ground up work takes a lot more value prioritization.
Sure, cool. I appreciate that.
So is that a budget that you have to control, like the spend, the storage spend, for example?
I am not in charge of it, but I need to be aware of it.
Okay.
The person in charge of the budget ultimately decides whether or not they're willing to spend the budget on the value that you've built around your project. So making, not only gathering the value and determining it, but then saying, hey, I need you to spend your money on this project. Some of it is our money that we control, but some of it is corporate spend dollars for different aspects of IT development, technology spend, things like that. So you have to come in, and then they have their own prioritization for projects, and different other teams who have data science needs and technology needs, maybe they need it today and I don't need it for 2 months. And so that kind of prioritization, then you're like, oh, great, I'm done with this. And then you have to like keep it on your back burner for 2 months and not lose sight of it as it goes through that whole process.
Thank you. I see Bill had asked a question a bit earlier that was, do you have a corporate structure with a distinct function which assures compliance with government regulations?
Yes.
If so, does your team, sorry, it's a little longer question. If so, does your team IT and compliance, which could maybe be called QA and pharma, work together on your applications?
Yeah, so we do have, we have a compliance team. We have like government compliance teams, and then we also have like IT SOX compliant teams. And both of those things do need to come together. There's code review, there's distinction of data access reviews as you go through publishing these apps. So those teams are not married, government compliance and IT compliance, like officially, but both of those pieces have to come together in order to get something in the works.
I love what you said about making sure that other teams exist across the organization and like figuring out what everybody else is working on. And I was wondering, like, aside from the community event, how do you start to build those relationships or figure out, like, in such a large organization, who you should talk to?
I think it starts small. Like when you're really close to a data project and there's one piece that you don't know. It's like shooting the email to the person that you saw last accessed that database, because you can check those things. You can say like, hey, I saw you were using this data, like what's going on with it? And so those kinds of small emails, and it's also getting over that hump of like self-doubt of like, oh, am I emailing the right person? Are they going to, hate me for derailing their day, for emailing the wrong person? And just like send the email, because the worst thing that happens is that they don't respond to you. And then you send an email to another person, and building that out. And then as I've moved through into a leadership role, it's getting plugged in with other team leaders where okay, like now I know the name of your team, but do you have somebody on your team who knows about this or who can help with this? And that's also something that like the Women in STEM group has helped with, because we have women in STEM across the entire organization. They are not just in corporate IT as your cloud engineers, like almost anyone with a data analyst title or anything like that could count. And a lot of people in health insurance have those math backgrounds that like I've been exposed to so many more people and so many more incredible women at Centene through that other organization, that now I know there's a new team, our member insights team, brand new team, but I'm like their manager immediately got plugged in with Women in STEM. And so now I'm connected to her on like both pieces. So it's really great to be able to have that.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great community anecdote there. Like it doesn't just have to be the data science community where you are meeting all these other people across different parts of the organization. Just want to double check with everybody here in the chat. I think there are a lot of people who I think need to play some sort of game together, because there's a lot of talk about a certain game. But just want to make sure there were no other questions that I might have missed. Okay, one question I love to ask for my own knowledge here is, if you think back to your career and as you're got into your role now, is there a piece of advice that kind of comes to mind that you received along the way, or a favorite piece of career advice that you've ever given?
I think it's something that even coming into this meeting where I'm like, I'm great. And then I'm also like, oh my goodness, what if people find out I'm not great? Where like that sort of imposter syndrome of just like, let people believe in you until you can believe in yourself, where it's like, no one's giving you opportunities that they don't think that you can do, because everybody's looking out for themselves. So even like I've given that advice, I give myself that advice, because it is like, let other people believe in you. And I think that's something that makes the most difference. And it comes even back around to like, if you think you're doing okay, like send that email to the stranger and hope that they can help you with with your data. So it's just like, yeah, you probably have the opportunities that you have because you earned them.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Katherine. If people want to get in touch with you, is the best way LinkedIn?
It is. I am not generally super active on posting on social media, but I am a scroller. So if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I will get it.
Awesome. I just put it in your LinkedIn there in the chat as well, and it will be up with the recording on the Data Science Hangout site. But thank you so much, Katherine. This has been a great conversation, and thank you for sharing your experience with us all.
Yeah, thank you for having me.